Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me. And today I am absolutely delighted to be joined by coach and writer Tricia Gehl. Is that the best way
Yep,
to pronounce it?
you
I
got it. Like
nailed
the
it. I
winner's
nailed
first
it.
name. You're so
Hello.
smart, Gary.
Thank you very much. Who's here to talk all things coaching. And for being the Best You, a coaching podcast, which is my regular podcast, I haven't actually talked to many coaches, which when Tricia and I started to talk about having her on the show, we agreed that coaching would actually be quite a topical topic to talk about today.
Yeah.
So I'm absolutely delighted to get that opportunity. Tricia was born and raised and is still residing in Chicago and spent over 11 years in corporate learning and development, working on leadership development, onboarding, and skill building programs. And these programs essentially introduced her to the power of coaching. And after struggling with depression, anxiety, and emotional eating for most of her life, Tricia embarked upon her coaching certification and was inspired to take a 3 month sabbatical from work to work through her ongoing challenges. Tricia says that coaching quite literally saved her life, and the support she received from her coaches in the program, supplemented by therapy, was invaluable, allowing her the space to comfortably open up and talk through all of the internal blocks that she had put in place. Tricia asserts that all serious coaches have their own coaches. And a few of Tricia's favourite things is, of course, coaching, writing, as I mentioned there, travelling, animals, champagne, Doctor Who,
Oh, Doctor Who.
reading movies from the 30s and 40s, 1930s and 40s, and RuPaul's Drag Race, sparkly eyeshadow, dancing, learning every day, and Earl Grey tea. So the story of Tricia and I meeting, before I say a formal thank you to her for joining me today, I was actually going through my coaching certification, and I can't remember if it was module one, two, or three. I feel it was maybe module two or three, a little bit
I think it
later.
was two, because that's when we do the triads,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So module two, and at that point, still in terms of academic learning or academic maturity and coaching, I'm still quite green. And they say, right, you're now going to go into breakout, you're going to practice, and you're going to have someone helping you with that. So a little bit daunting, and you just quite never know who you're going to get, how easy they are to work with, and if you're actually going to be able to accomplish the exercise that you're there to do. And fortunately, I was paired up with Tricia, and Tricia presented me with a problem, and we had an opportunity to work through that problem. Tricia had a breakthrough that day, which was incredible. It actually was really the start of our relationship, and we've kept in touch ever since. And it was my first breakthrough as a coach. I was wondering if I'd done something wrong. You know, at the time I thought, well, have I broke her? I don't know exactly what's happened here. And then we talked and walked through that, and it was a very powerful experience for both of us. So it's so great, after a number of years after that event, I should say, that we get the opportunity to do this. So with all that said, Tricia, thank you very, very much for joining me today.
You are so very welcome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And just looking forward to some good conversation, because really, as coaches, we just kind of have conversations all day long. Like, if you want to boil it down, I know I'm probably oversimplifying, but we really just have good conversations all day long,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Conversations with an outcome, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's go back a wee bit. What initially drew you into the field of learning and development, and how did those experiences shape your approach to coaching?
Yeah. I, like a lot of things in my life, I quite literally just stumbled into it. Um, I, prior to working in learning and development proper at PwC, I had worked in other industries where I didn't even know learning and development was a thing. I didn't know it was a career. I didn't know it was something that most companies had.
Yeah,
I just happened to, wherever I was working, like, I'll give you a short example. I was in auto loans, worked in auto loans, and I did not think the way that they were training the new people was efficient, and it wasn't working out. And you had people on the floor who still didn't know what to do because the managers were trying to do their job and train. So I proposed, like, let me write a manual and let me take everybody through all the new hires through their training. Because if you're telling me that I'm the best processor that you have, well, let me teach others how to do it the same way I do it.
Yeah.
So that kind of set me up a million years ago, for moving into learning and development, but I had no idea it was a thing. So I just happened to get a role at PwC back in 2008 as a temp, like as a contractor,
Yeah.
and I just never left. And got a couple of promotions in there, and that's where I discovered and fell in love with coaching, because a lot of the firms programs, including like onboarding, all of the professional development, they all had a coaching component to it.
Mm.
There was either a coach facilitator, or we had coaches working with learners in small groups or in one-on-one. I didn't know coaching, again, didn't know coaching was a thing. So started getting exposure to them, and just seeing like how they were asking questions, never paid attention to, like, now we know, Gary, if like most of us coaches, we have a hard time asking close-ended questions at this point, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
feel natural, but didn't think about that back then. So I was noticing how fulfilled and satisfied that those coaches were, and that a lot of their like what they were doing was around connecting with people. So
Yeah.
just like starting to see like, oh, okay, I could use some of that in my day to day in my learning and development role. And it just took hold, and I couldn't let it go. It's like, no, I really want to go and do this for myself. That's a fast forwarded version. But yeah, that's, if it weren't for that role at PwC, I don't know if I would have discovered coaching, or at least pursued it as a career path.
Yeah. And when you even with the fact that you kind of stumbled upon it and then decided to make a good go of it while you were there, making improvements and
Mhm.
actually genuinely affecting meaningful change, what did you get out of it? Was it just an annoyance of something being done poorly and you could do it better, or was there something deeper there in terms of human connection, progress, development?
It was the deeper, like, there was something deeper, because when I looked, like, PwC has an internal coaching team
Mm.
of 25 of, well, at the time was 25 of the most brilliant humans I've ever encountered. And I looked at them as like the elite. Like, these
Yeah.
people are just, wow. I will never be transcend to this level. But I was so inspired by them, and I noticed that a lot of the things that the tools that they were using, or the strengths that they had, that I felt at the time, even though I talked myself out of it, were similar to mine. Like, I could easily connect with anyone.
Mm.
I could read people like a book. I can read in between the lines of what someone is saying. And I didn't realize that that was kind of my superpower. I just thought
Yeah.
it was something growing up that everybody did. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you mean you can't tell that person is lying, or you didn't notice he touched his face 3 times when he said that, and
Yeah.
something's not right? Like, so like, the more I talk to them, the more I realize that, like, oh, these are strengths, and this is something that I could do that too. And it was with their encouragement that I kind of turned down some of those like inner voices, our little gremlin message,
Yeah.
and went and pursued it. And I don't even know if I answered your question, Gary. Now
Oh,
I'm just rambling.
100%. No,
Yeah.
100% you did. And you also said a very poignant thing there in terms of, this community of 25 people, of the most brilliant people that you've come across to that point in your life and your career, and then they made a point of encouraging you. And that's one thing I've noticed in the coaching community. It's very different from any other community that I've been involved in at all, where there probably isn't in some level, some sort of competitive
Sure.
element of it, but it's not the first thing. It's people genuinely trying to help people, and there are absolutely no shortage of things and people that need to be improved, if I could use that word, in the world. So, regardless if every single person in the world is a coach, there would still be a need for coaching because, as people get incrementally better, there's more opportunity and more exposure to get incrementally better even still. And so that just to hear that they took a stance, especially in a consulting capacity, in terms of PwC, I've worked with some of the big four and they're not always they're not always about the team. Let's just say that.
They're
And
like,
that's
let's let everybody in the room. They're not always about let's let everybody have a seat at the table.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. There's certainly
Yeah.
a competitive environment there. I think is probably the best way to say that. I don't mean to be disparaging against any
No,
of
but
the
it's super
consulting
competitive.
organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then just to hear you say that they did encourage you, you already have a reverence for these people, and for them to take their time to say, yes, you should do it. Here's some guidance and advice, tips and tricks,
Yes.
and go ahead is I just love, I absolutely love
Yes.
hearing that, because it's not, maybe it's not very often we see that. It's not very often we call it out. It's not very often that we acknowledge that type and style of supportive behavior that the coaching industry has, certainly
Yeah.
in my experience. So let's go back to you as part of your bio there. We were talking about some of the personal struggles that you had to
Mhm.
endure, such as depression, anxiety, emotional eating, and how that influenced your life at the time. How did that then manifest itself to influencing your coaching philosophy and how you work with clients today?
Sure. And that whole, like the whole depression, anxiety is what prevented me from pursuing it. So,
Right.
sooner. And to go back to those coaches, when I would talk to them about it, I would say, one of my long-term goals is to get my coaching certification. And every single one of them would flip it around and say, why long term?
Yeah.
like, why
Yeah.
not now? And it's interesting now that, we're on the other side as coaches. And like, well, of course, that's going to be the first question. Why aren't you doing it now? Because they can
Yeah.
sense there's something getting in the way. So yeah, that played a big part of me thinking that I can't do it. I'll never be able to help anyone. I can't help myself. And it was so extreme that the I did my mods in person.
Yeah.
So the Thursday night before I did a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it was at a hotel near O'Hare Airport. I'm in downtown Chicago. So I was going to take a cab there and sleep at the hotel for the weekend so I could be fully immersed. And I had such a crying fit the when I was packing up and in the cab that the driver was like, ma'am, are you okay? That I almost told him to turn around. I
Really.
almost didn't even show up for mod one because I was so convinced that I can't even get my own life together. How am I going to help somebody else? And what was funny is morning one of mod one, at least 17 people, I'm not exaggerating, raised their hand and said that same thing. I'm a hot mess. How am I supposed to help others? And I was like, oh my God, okay, I can relax a little.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big block that almost prevented me from even doing that. So then fast forward when I think about like how this impacts my coaching philosophy and how I work with clients is I feel like I know most coaches, we're an empathetic bunch to begin with, but I feel like I ooze empathy when it comes to people's inner blocks. And I am always extra careful not to try to shift people before they're ready,
Yeah.
and to really hear them and not, yes, acknowledge and validate and all the things that we do, but not poo poo someone's like, I think I am a failure and I am this. And said, oh, no, you're not. Like, really being careful because then that person's not going to feel seen or heard because I know how it bothered me so much if I would say certain things and people would say, oh, you just need to do this or you just need to do that. Like, I feel like I could really meet clients where they're at, especially when I'm coaching around anxiety, and sometimes depression. Even when you're doing career and leadership coaching, depression pops up. So we're as you know, we're coaching the whole person,
Yeah.
not just the situation. So yeah, I feel like I can bring a real like deep empathy and understanding about any kind of inner blocks. So like, oh, I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it comes from such a rich experiential place, then, which adds just so much more value. So then you start thankfully you
Yes,
start
I
module
show up.
one, you show up, you go through, and then at some point after that, you decided to take a sabbatical
Yes.
from what was there a particular incident, circumstance, experience that became a pivotal moment for you to do that?
Yes, it was one of those things where like I'd finally found the thing that I wanted to do. And I was already 43 at the time when I was starting my coach training.
Yeah,
And the reason that I knew that this was for me and it was going to work was that I could not let it go. And it was the one thing that my depression didn't override. Like I was
wow,
able to, my depression was able to talk me out of everything, but it
yeah,
wouldn't talk me out of this. So I was like, oh shit, I better pay attention.
yeah,
And there was two things. There was a colleague of mine who's also a close friend. They had been out for several months on leave. And when they came back, they shared the reason with me. And it was one of those aha moments of this person left to tend to something personal and the sky didn't fall. They didn't lose their job. They didn't. And this was right on the cusp of people starting to talk about mental health at
yeah,
work and things like that. So really that person was a huge inspiration. Like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. But I was really at my kind of a rock bottom. And I thought, okay, this coaching thing has a hold on me. I can't let it go. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to need to tackle everything. And I'm going to need to start like really. I was so tired of my own story. I'm
mm,
depressed and blah, blah, blah. I was ready to tackle it. So that was kind of really, again, I say coaching quite literally saved my life. And one of the things that I found helpful, um, now I'll say good at therapy. Before I was not. I have a hard time just like, oh, here's what's bothering me. But if I'm asked a direct question, no matter how painful the answer, it's impossible for me not to answer. So
right,
the coaching model worked brilliantly for me. So
yeah,
when I was working with my peer coach, we were working on my depression, anxiety, things like that. And it was, I didn't even recognize myself because I was able to answer everything. So that worked for me, even so much that when I was in therapy at the time, I asked the therapist, like, can you just ask me some questions? And he was taken aback. He's like, oh, okay. I was like, no,
yeah,
no, you start, just ask. Come on. Well, because
yeah,
that worked for me. Yeah.
yeah,
So that was, and then I took the time off and which was scary, like to say, hey, I'm going through something,
yeah,
PwC. And the firm was just so amazing. And they've kind of always been at the forefront of the big four when it comes to employee well being. At least I'm probably a little biased. Um, Super supportive, did not mess up my career. In fact, when I came back, I was put right on, kind of negotiated it while I was off, like the plummiest of projects that you can ever have at the firm in L&D.
yeah,
And that's how I wrote out my time there on that big project. But yeah, it just, I couldn't, even my doctor asked me, are you sure you should be doing this coaching thing right now? How are you going to do this if you're a mess like this? And I remember thinking, well, that's harsh, bitch. But
yeah.
at the
Oh my
same
word.
time,
Oh
I was like,
wow.
no, it's the reason that I have to do it is because this is the one thing that my depression hasn't talked me out of. So yeah, that's kind of how it led. And I came
Yeah,
back 3 months later to work. Like a changed human being because
yeah,
working, I was doing therapy twice a week, group therapy, and then my coaching. And so it was just, yeah, the best decision I've ever made in my life. Both things, starting the coach training and then taking that 3 month, we'll call it a sabbatical, mental health
yeah.
sabbatical. Yeah.
Yeah, really taking the plunge and investing in yourself. And you know,
Yeah.
one of the things that was so poignant of what you said there, Tricia, was it was one of the few things that the depression couldn't talk you out of, couldn't dissuade you from. I know
Yeah.
you didn't say that exact word. And I was actually watching a master class earlier today, and it was the one of the co-founders of Reddit, and he said, you know, you're an entrepreneur if the very last thing you think of and the very first, at night before you fall asleep,
Yeah.
and the very first thing you think of in the morning, regardless of what else is going on in your life, is this thing, then you should go and pursue that. And
Yes.
that kind of came up for me at the time. I was thinking, that's my life right now. That's the
Yeah.
cool things I get to do. It's the people I get to help and serve. It's hopefully the impact that we get to have doing what we do here. And it kind of resonated with me in terms of the way that you explained that there. Would that be a similar type situation?
Absolutely. And thinking about like the thing that I used to roll my eyes at when people would say, well, if you find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And now
Yeah,
we are living proof that I don't know. I mean, I know you and I have talked about this privately, but like, yeah, I don't feel like I work. I feel
yeah,
like this doesn't feel like work.
yeah,
This feels like amazing conversations with people, helping them connect the dots, helping them move forward, helping them break down any wall that's in their way. Um, so it doesn't feel like work. And to that point of,
yeah,
yeah, even if you're thinking about it before bed and in the morning, it's not in the Sunday scaries way it
yeah,
used to be.
yeah,
So yeah, that completely resonates with me.
yeah. Fabulous. So let's talk about coaching a wee bit
Yeah.
because it's not without its challenges, I think. And sometimes, human beings are kind of fickle creatures and we don't get each other the same way, the same time. And although the majority of my clients thus far, not all have been willing, they have been involved and invested in their growth journey or their opportunity to get out of their own way, get better at something, give themselves an opportunity that maybe not present itself before. There are some who are there under duress. There are
Yes.
some there, and I think that's a little bit of a lack of understanding of the coaching process, because if someone is presented to you at such a late stage in their employment or their journey or something with a mandate, essentially, you need to fix this person. You are the last hope, the last chance. My thought and my answer is you should have called me 2 years ago, a
Right.
year ago, 6 months ago, not
Right.
the
Why'd you let
last
it get this
chance.
far?
No, exactly, exactly. But can you describe, some challenging coaching sessions or challenging client situation that you've come across that you've had to navigate?
Yeah. And there's like all different levels of challenges too, right? You
Yeah,
have like the smaller challenges of where you have those clients that are in denial, like in deep denial.
yeah,
And like, I don't claim to know everything or can, have a crystal ball. But when you're working with someone and you point something out, may I make an observation based on, and they're like, no, that's not it. But the next thing they say is exactly the same and it's it.
yeah,
And you're like, okay, that is always hard. And eventually they get to the place where they're like, okay, I think there was something there and we need to work on this.
yeah.
But that is always like one of those kind of humorous challenges. We're like,
Mm,
okay, so that's not it. Right. Tell me what it is. Um, and then there's challenges where, like when I was working with a client a couple of years back on career coaching.
mm,
Well, we ended up moving into some personal space, and this client was being really, really verbally abused by their boyfriend and gaslit. And just those kind of situations are hard because, and this
yeah,
client was a lot younger than me, like my niece's ages. And it's one of those where you're like, oh, you just want to shake them. And everybody's got to get there in their own time. So that's a challenge of like continuing to acknowledge and validate, continuing to work on their psyche to make sure they know that they're valued, that they are seen, that they have the power to do whatever they want when they are feeling so beat down. Um, that's a challenge. Like those kind of clients are a challenge for me to not you got to stay the course, and that's when we really have to find like walk that line with our tools and what we train to do, because you don't want to scare the rabbit out of the yard, so to speak, either.
yeah.
Any wrong move can frighten someone. I'd be curious if it's okay to ask you, like put the same question back to you.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. It's similar circumstance. I think some of the main thorny challenges I had, certainly in the early days, was my propensity to very instinctively, very quickly know what the issue is and
Hmm.
know what the solution is. And because I came from a project management background and
Yeah.
essentially problem solving every day. So then and kind of my early introduction to coaching would really be around trying to get key stakeholders to play the game, to come along with us, understand their challenges, address the challenges as best as we can, raise the
Hmm.
communications when we had to, and do whatever basically I had to get done to get the project done. But it was always from a very specific and selfish perspective, quite frankly,
Sure.
where, I need, Tricia, I need you to do this. So tell me what it's
Yeah.
going to take to get you to do this. And then you would say, well, I'm really annoyed. This is the fourth time you've tried this. You've never managed to get it done before. Well, it wasn't me before. So tell me how I can help and how we can
Right.
get beyond this. And we would get to a spot where you have a level of comfort. I have a level of comfort. I'm not railroading you into anything that you don't want to do. And we get a happy medium and we can move forward. So in the early stages of my coaching career, it was very much get to the solution as quickly as we possibly can. And I said when I embarked upon my coaching journey, I says, I think I've been coaching for a while. I think I've been coaching for quite some time. And then I learned about the art and science of coaching. And I was saying, nope, I was just telling people what to do with a smile on my face. So
Yep.
so then the challenges I had, do you know what? They didn't really manifest themselves into challenges within a direct session in and of itself. What it really manifested itself was an over dependence on me over time because I gave them a
Mm.
solution, or we didn't really truly come to the client coming up with their own solution. It
Right.
was it and it wasn't even 50-50. Honestly, Tricia, it wasn't. I
Yeah.
was I was more overbearing because I'm thinking I can help. And it was from a thirst to really genuinely help and serve. My knowledge, manifested itself fairly quickly when they came back in and said, what do you think I should do? And as we go back and I say, well, what options do you have open to you right now?
Yeah.
What do you think? And they kind of basically said, without being so blatant, you could just tell me what to do because that's what we did before and it worked and it was great. And I thought, oh, you're actually going backwards because if you've created a dependence on me, I'm not always going to be there for you. And that's not my job is to get me out of your way as
Hmm.
quickly as is practical, if notwithstanding the business aspect of coaching. So it was those were the challenges that I had. So thankfully, the clients they certainly weren't ungrateful about
Hmm.
the help that they got. But I did have moments of kind of semi-darkness where I'm thinking, that's not why you're doing this. And it's just part of the growth journey. It's part
Oh,
of
of course.
shedding my previous skin and growing my new skin into what I'm doing. So there was no catastrophic circumstances or
Hmm.
genuine awkward situations or anything. But it happened enough times for me to say, no, I have to try and do something different. I have to wrestle with my own inner voice and say, this is not your job. This is not your
Right.
job. This is not your job. Your job is different now, Gary. Do something different and try and help and
It's
serve them.
hard to break though,
It
right?
is.
And I would argue that almost every coach goes through what you brought up in the beginning too of trying to get someone to a solution
Yeah.
and like wrap it up in a bow in a session.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at what we did here.
Yeah.
And well, surprise, next session, guess what? It's still there.
Yeah.
Like we thought yes, I think that's, and given your background, same with me, project management and L&D. And that's why we always joke about coaches make excellent consultants because
Yeah.
we ask the right questions and then we have like, oh, why don't you try this? Why don't you like, but that's in a consulting space.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget to stop at asking the questions
Yeah.
and not offering solutions because
Yeah.
we are human too. Yeah, of
Indeed, and it's a fine line because you do want to add value, and it gets to,
course.
that it's kind of modified. I've modified my style a wee bit more, and it probably from the IPEC training that that
Mm,
that we had, to say, would you mind if I shared an experience that's
yes.
somewhat analogous to what you're experiencing right now, and then I would get an opportunity to at least release some of that information and say, right, what do you think about that? What's different about the situation? What's similar about the situation? And then get that opportunity to move forward. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, touch
you
wood.
kind of have to,
Yes.
because a lot of clients complain, or people who have been coached complain that, well, all they did was ask me what I thought,
Mhm.
and that's not what I wanted. So it's like,
Yeah,
you're right, finding that fine line of doing that and saying, would you mind if I make an observation? Or
exactly.
was wondering if you thought about this,
Yeah.
and or how does this sound? So like, yes, we have to, it's like coaching plus. You have to
Yes.
have an extra little bit of value to add there as well.
Definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was going to just say that, touch wood, there has been no catastrophes or no
Mhm.
disasters associated that I know of. Anyway, with my client base. But one of my, I guess one of my advertising lines is, if you want to get better at something, get a coach.
Mhm.
So I always have that in my mind as well, that if you overdo the questioning, and you're essentially adding to their burden, where they're saying, I've been asking
Mm.
myself similar questions for so long, I was hoping you were going to help me release. That gives you an opportunity to switch gears, if you're listening properly, if you're
Yes.
genuinely invested in how that information is being delivered to you. So those are the magic moments when you're kind of like,
Mhm.
right, I was potentially going down this road with this person. We now have a couple of options, and I can present those options, and we can see where we take it from there.
Yeah, you can freestyle. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
always use the phrase like, coaching is about teaching you how to fish.
Yeah,
So like,
yeah,
hey, I can give you every answer, or I was like, or I can give you the tools to help you figure this out in the moment when you're on a Zoom call and everything is, going to hell, and you have to try to,
yeah,
that's what we're shooting for. And yes, we can give suggestions, but sometimes it's asking a client, well, what would you do if we weren't in the session right now? Like, just
yeah,
say I had to cancel on you today for whatever reason. How
yeah,
would you have moved forward tonight? Well, I probably would have done this. Like, okay, maybe it's not the best plan. And I'm not saying that mine would have been any better, but you have something here. So it's reminding people too how capable they are.
yes,
Because to your point, a lot of people do come to coaching and think, I am at the end of my rope here. Please tell me how to salvage this, when they still have so much brain power and brain capacity left,
yeah,
more than they know.
yeah,
And they, again, an eye roll. You always say, like, the client already has all the answers. They really do. We know
truly.
this to be true.
Yeah,
It's just getting it out of them and getting them to believe that they've got it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, so as I was chatting about in your introductory bio, all serious coaches have coaches is an affirmation of
I can't
Tricia's.
wait to tell you about that line. Go ahead.
I'm looking forward to that. So can you elaborate on this belief and how that's helped your ongoing coaching practice and maybe personal development too?
Yes, and there is a serious component to it, but how the verbiage came about is very, very innocuous, I guess, is maybe not even the right word. When I was writing the copy for my website, I had in there, all coaches have coaches. And I had, again, one of the greatest coaches I have ever known. His name is Tom Patterson. He was one of the external coaches that PwC used for like everything, because he's just a unicorn. The
Yeah,
man is just brilliant
yeah,
and funny and just someone you always want around, but is such a genius. And he was one of the people who really pushed me to move on and kind of mentored me along the way. So Tom Patterson is always going to be like a big hero to me. And he was the one that added, I had him, I was too embarrassed to have anybody else look at my copy that I wrote, but
yeah,
I asked Tom to. And he added the serious. All serious coaches have coaches. And when we were talking about it, it was more like, think about people who say they're coaches, but have never had any training.
yeah.
And they're just, again, not saying that they're not effective and don't have clients that get what they need, but it was around like the veracity of, we are serious coaches. We're taking this seriously. And to do that, we walk our talk,
Yeah,
so it's like, how can you expect someone to even like spend their hard-earned money if they're paying for it themselves
Mm.
on your coaching services if you don't yourself even have a coach?
Yeah.
Or, it's not to say that you can't be effective one without the other, but there's just something in there of validity, of like, well, yes, of course I work with a coach. And I always use that example too of, this is why we coaches have coaches, because sometimes my coach um, will ask me one question and I'll be like, well, why couldn't I have done that for myself? I do this for a living.
Yeah.
Of course, that's the dot connection. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Like, so yeah, I know that I would not be as an effective coach if I weren't being coached. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to be like I purchased this package. Sometimes that is what it is.
Mm.
But sometimes it is just picking up the phone and saying, my one of my peer clients from IPAC, her name is Elizabeth Earhart. I'm going to shout out to her too. I need something. I'm like, I need some coaching. Okay, we get on and we do a session. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm back to normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I've kind of adopted Tom's. He's the one that had it the serious.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, if you're serious about this profession and you are all in and you believe in its merits and that it can move mountains, you should probably be getting coached yourself. I
Yeah.
don't know. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I completely agree. And back to the analogy of being certified or not being certified, I said in a classroom for almost 20 years now, some of the best project managers I ever dealt with weren't certified.
Right.
And some of the project managers that I would hope and pray that would never be on my team at some point in my career,
Yes.
they were certified, so they became book smart, not street smart,
Mm-hmm.
not book smart, or something in between. In terms of coaching, however, as a lifelong educator, I do value the experience that goes with sitting down and genuinely learning coaching,
Yeah.
because it's not just a way with people. It's not just, even the things that you mentioned earlier, empathy and an ability to understand the human psyche, human behavior, and actions and reactions and such. There's just more to it than that. To
Yeah.
make sure that it's not about you, that it's about the client at all times, and move forward from there. So, and then one of the main mantras, and I can't remember if it came through our training, but it's just been prevalent ever since. Everyone who's serious about anything has a coach. Everyone. So
Yeah.
when you look at
Oprah. I always use
Oprah.
Oprah. Oprah has like at one point three coaches.
Yeah,
She's Oprah and she's
yeah,
still using a coach. That's why she's Oprah.
yeah, exactly that. And I'm a sports fan, so and I like to watch tennis, especially the Grand Slams. And you look at the Grand Slam, and then they go to their box, and there's the fitness coach, there's the health and wellness coach, there's the sports psychologist coach, there's the swing coach. Like, not all the coaches are specific to the mechanics of hitting a ball in a way that it's going to hopefully get you a point in a game. There's just that to it. So I think it's trying to genuinely, I don't know if it's just because it's somewhat in its infancy in comparison to other industries out there right now,
Sure.
that it's not an industry that's trying to kind of continue to regenerate itself and feed itself, with more and more and more revenue. This is a cash cow. It's nothing like that. It's exactly to your example there, where you're sitting, you're ruminating on something, there's an itch that you just can't scratch, and you're thinking, I'm going to just chat to someone. And invariably, it's usually a short time later where you do the face palm to the head and you go, oh, oh, you know what? And
Duh.
you
Yeah.
just needed that release. You just needed to articulate it, be asked in a certain way, be in the right, frame of mind, the right
Mhm.
circumstance, and give yourself the right opportunity to do it. And as you say, there's different ways of doing it. Sometimes you might be purchasing a package to say, I'm going to try and get better at this. I'm going to move through the stages of this
Yeah.
particular process. Other times it is that one-on-one conversation. Other times, there's online subscriptions, like whatever it is. But if you're not doing something in and around yourself that's going to help you become a better human, help you become a better professional, help you become a better servant, then
Right.
other people are. And you're not going to get from your career what you think you're going to get from your career if you don't do that
Oh,
investment.
that's so brilliant, Gary. And from like, just think of like from a hypocritical standpoint. I know maybe that's a little harsh, but like, how can we expect or champion our clients to grow and change and develop? And all right, come on, what's the inner block that's getting in the way? Let's talk. Like, when we are not doing that
Yeah,
ourselves, we're just going to remain stagnant, and those walls are just going to creep up higher and higher. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the coaching industry is definitely not do what I say, don't do what I do,
Right.
because I mean, I've been very fortunate not to have that conversation. If someone says, "Have you got a coach?" I would say, "Yes, I do." And then that would be the end of the conversation. But could you imagine the conversation?
Like, oh
You're
no.
you're saying, "No, no, no, I don't believe in all that jibber jabber," and
Right. I could do it on my own. Yeah, don't
yeah.
worry about me. Yeah.
So yeah, exactly, exactly. And a lot of it we probably can, but not all of it. And we know
Right.
that. We
We
already
know
know
that.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
We know our
So
limitations. Yep.
definitely, and everyone has them. Everyone has them, and it's
Mm.
the folks that are willing and open to trying to expose those to see if they're genuinely holding them back or they're just more of an inconvenience or an annoyance. And that's the beauty, you get that opportunity it might not be monumental gains that someone's looking to get. They're just looking for a bit of clarity, looking for a bit of
Mm.
an understanding of, what's kind of potentially holding them back, or if they're actually in a sweet spot right now and everything should be okay, and just those
Yep.
opportunities to talk and walk through it with them. It's such a privilege. So looking back, what would you say to date you're most proud of in your coaching journey? And then to add to that, what advice would you give to someone who's possibly considering entering the coaching industry?
Yeah. I would say that I am most proud of the fact that I left a really good job at PwC, like a big fancy corporate project management job at one of the big four, and made a go of like going out on my own.
Yeah,
That's not anything I ever wanted. I I specifically, my whole plan was to get on that internal team of those elite folks.
yeah,
That was it. That I was one track. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I would just figure that out going, but I knew that that was it. Um, and then working with a coach, I started doing some like deeper values work. And my top two are autonomy and freedom. I was like, oh shit. Yeah, you know, this is no offense to the firm because this is how you have to be structured. You're assigned where you're coaching. Sometimes you're going to go on this program. We need you to facilitate this in this city.
yeah.
I was like, I want to do my own thing. I
Mhm.
want to do only what I want and when I want to do it. And I know that sounds so childish, but I connected the dots with why I often in my mind behave like a petulant teenager when I'm told what to do. Of like, well, I don't want to do that. I just don't want to. So I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
And so I never had aspirations of entrepreneurship, solopreneurship. I was always comfortable in a corporate structure. I knew how to play that game. I knew how to talk that talk. I
yeah,
liked vacation time and all of that. But it just wasn't going to serve me anymore. And I knew that, like I always joke, I've kind of Frankensteined a career together for myself because I could do some curriculum writing.
yeah,
I would do some workshops. Oh, and then I do one-on-one. And then I I'm most proud of myself for recognizing what was going to make me the happiest, what was going to serve me in like what I needed and what I wanted. And I did it. And it was scary. And like some years have been better than others.
yeah,
But I am so proud of myself because looking like 10 years ago, I would have never, ever had the courage to do that. So my advice to someone, um, and the second piece, which kind of goes with the advice, I don't know about how you felt after we came out of coach training, and all of a sudden I was seeing everybody posting all these inspirational quotes, and everybody was so buttoned up and professional. And I am just not that person. And I thought, where am I? Am I going to have to change who I am to be a coach? Like, no one is going to take me seriously. I won't get any clients. And then you come to, you find your people. Who is
Yeah.
for you finds you.
Yeah.
So to get the clients who want to laugh a lot, like I always say, I take the work seriously, but not myself.
Yeah.
I get the clients who are like, is it okay if I swear during session? Please, because I'm gonna. So
Yeah.
let's just do this. And
Yeah.
um, I used to wear my hair in all sorts of kooky colors, and I used to think that it was going to be a liability. I would have people say, well, I chose you out of the group of people because your hair was purple. Your
Yeah.
nails were purple. I thought you would be more, or you would be less judgmental. So my advice is be exactly who you are, because your clients will find you. Your people
Yeah.
who is, I am really, I'll say it again, who is for you will find you. What is for you will find you. It's when you start trying to be like, I'm going to put a blazer on and start posting these inspirational quotes every day. And I'm going to speak in this, like, just be yourself.
Yeah.
The chemistry will work. People will find you. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, because I thought I was going to have to change like who I
Yeah.
was completely, or else nobody would ever want to work with me.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, I'm still here. So it's
Yeah.
working.
So powerful. I love that, and it's so interesting. People mimic what they believe to be successful behavior at
Right.
times, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the more I paid attention, probably a kind of similar journey to you after my coaching training, and you get access to a bigger network. You look at things that you didn't know about before, and maybe follow some folks. LinkedIn is my main platform of choice. I do have a bit of a presence on Facebook too. And the what I noticed over time, and not in terms of a judgment, but just a complete observation, was most people are regurgitating someone else's material anyway. They're just putting it
Yeah.
in a different bow. They're just putting it on their own, like, their own template or letterhead or, whatever it is. And I always found that kind of odd. I'm thinking about, like, what do you think? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you could even take that quote and then provide your interpretation, but I see a lot of lookalikes out there is probably the best way to say it,
Yeah.
which was my inspiration to then say, I'm going to go online every day, and I'm going to put a video there every day in my little set format that I have. And I'm just going to talk about stuff. I mean, it's a mini coaching session. Like, if you listen, some
Right.
people kind of listen and they're like, oh, that was kind of fun, and I'm like, well, did you ask yourself the question that I posed at the end? Did you take that action that I encourage you to take? So it's taken people a bit of a time to get beyond it, but literally to exactly what you said there, Tricia. I was kind of thinking, I don't want to be behind a templated quote from Peter
Mm-hmm.
Drucker or Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa or whomever else, and then just put some other bits and pieces there. I want to just say, hey, here's a wee baldy guy talking to you about some
Right.
stuff that I think is kind of meaningful. It's not going away. It's something that's been gnawing at me for a wee while. What do you think about this? And to get some of the feedback that I've gotten thus far, if nothing else, it just makes me feel better. It makes me feel more authentic
It
to
is the
what I want to be.
authenticity. Yep.
Yeah. And it's more of a calming, rewarding experience is probably the best way
Mm-hmm.
to say it for me. Yeah, so absolutely. So this has been a fabulous conversation. Before we wrap up today,
Yeah.
where can the listeners find you, Tricia?
You can find me at powergroovecoaching.com is my website. Everything you need to know is on there. But if you want to know more, there's a place to book a complimentary session. You can see, and you can see like the packages that I offer. I'd say that is the easiest place to find me, or on LinkedIn. But yeah, Power Groove Coaching is my private practice. And yeah, probably the easiest. Reach out if you want to have a conversation and if you like to have a few laughs.
Well, I was going to say everyone likes to laugh. Maybe that's not quite so true, but yeah,
Most people do. Even if I can even get my like stodgiest of clients, when I work like C-suite and stuff, and some of them are a little more buttoned up, I can get them to even just lift one side. I'm like, yeah, I got them. Yeah,
yeah,
okay. They think I'm
winning.
funny. It's good. I'm winning.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. I love it,
Thank you for
Tricia.
having me.
Oh,
I
thank you
appreciate
very,
it.
very much. It's been a
This was fun.
fantastic time. Yeah, we'll do this
Yeah.
again sometime.
All right. Thank you.